question and probably has a very big answer behind it, but I will give you my simple response to that. Obviously, early days, you start out with a prototype, you have an idea in mind or a problem to solve, and you come up with a potential solution. That's usually mapped out through the prototyping phase of your company. And then when you've gotten a little traction, maybe you've gotten some fundraising under your belt, and also you've got some key people at your company, and you've socialized the effort on your prototype. You've gone out, you have a minimal viable product, and you've gone out and really promoted, this is what we have, this is the solution that we're providing to this problem. That's kind of that early day prototyping. But moving to then a pilot, which I do think oftentimes is a skip step, is I think actually a really big part of the crank, that extra gear you need when you get to the scalable adoption, is to have a successful pilot. And so an area that I was extremely experienced with at Intuitive specifically was a go-to-market effort for Ion, which was a new product for them. I had already been at Intuitive around 9 years when they launched Ion, and I was part of that founding team. And we got to see firsthand that having a successful pilot and having strategic clinical research sites that are giving you real-time feedback and really understanding the bugs within your own system and also even the bugs within your own market, what's not being met, what are some problems that are still unresolved, that can give you so much insight to remove prior to going to what we call broad launch or full launch, where now you're in the hands of many and they are not friends of yours and they're not as forgiving as the pilot community would be. So fail often and frequent in your pilot community. That's the whole point of it, is to get the bugs out, and to the point where you're now in a scalable place where you're now in a broad launch. You want to make sure you've learned the lessons in that pilot and you had a really strategic setup for your clinical research sites and your pilot sites where they're going to give you loop feedback on a regular and frequent basis, not only about the product itself, but also about how you're approaching the market. Even your marketing messaging should be questioned during the piloting phase. So if you've done that correctly, if you've laid out a pilot strategy that's going to reinforce what you think you know through your prototype, and you've also vetted it out with them, you've gotten their feedback on what could be tweaked and what could potentially be something you add to catapult you into a different category than your competitors that are more than likely already out there. That's what's going to lead to scalable adoption, is having a really well-run pilot, making sure you're listening to your customer during that time and making the adjustments. I have seen too many times to count companies where they just completely skip either the pilot opportunity to learn or they don't listen. Maybe during the pilot, you were given a ton of feedback on things you could do to iterate your idea. And people don't want to do that. They don't want to go back in time and recalibrate, or what I call zoom out, because it's either costly or time consuming or both, or you don't have the resources to zoom out and go back. You've got the board breathing down your neck and wanting you to go forward. So sometimes people just do, and they go forward without a successful pilot. That's going to lead to a very similar response in your adoption efforts. But I would say if you've laid it all out really systematically and you've done a stop check every single time, meaning from prototype to pilot and now scalable adoption, you're going to be successful because you were very strategic and thoughtful in how you laid this out. You brought in advisors, you brought in key opinion leaders, you've vetted and tested your product, you've had multiple calls with your product engineers and defined voice of customer that can give you real-time feedback and candid feedback that you may or may not need to hear. But I think that's really what it takes to move from prototype to scalable adoption, is being mindful of the steps involved and having strategy along the way.